I think you should talk with a guy called Hamish Kerr, who is the most dominant high jumper in the world right now. He's Olympic champion, world champion, Diamond League champion, and I haven't dived into this with him, but he smiles before every jump. And I think you having to talk to him about mentality and how he approaches competition, I think there could be something really interesting there.
I would love to if you can put me in touch, and it would be an absolute pleasure. Welcome back, Marcus. It was great speaking to you about your part, but now we flip the mic and it's your turn to put me in the hot seat and ask me a few questions, and you're bushwhacking me, so this will be interesting. So
I'm looking forward to this. Yeah, thanks for having me back. I have a 13-month-old boy, so parent for the first time, and in my life I've seen a lot of pretty terrible parenting around sport. And I'm sure as a coach, especially as a coach who's led academies, you've seen some pretty intense stuff from parents. So the first thing I want to ask you is, what are the most common things you see parents get wrong with kids who are in sport and can play to a high level? And what would one piece of advice be if you had to try and narrow down on the single most effective piece of advice for parents?
Yeah, great question. And I definitely have some pearlers here. The first thing is basic psychology. Basic psychology in a lot of people's minds is, if somebody's not winning, they're not trying hard enough, or they don't want it enough. And that is just simply untrue. A lot of the time, players maybe check out because of the pressure and look like they're not trying, but they're not, and they aren't really trying as hard as they can, because their mind is in a place that is so fried that they can't. But, no player goes on court and on set point goes, "Hey mom, hey dad, watch this, easy forehand, I'm going to put it in the back fence."
Or if they do, that's at the end of a journey.
Yeah. They don't do these things on purpose.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing, is that basic psychology is terrible psychology generally. And parents need to be, if the kid likes playing and they're showing signs of not giving their best in matches, you need to find out, with questions like, what would it take for you to enjoy your tennis a bit more? What would it take for you to, run harder for the ball? That type of questioning, rather than accusing them of not trying, or, you wasting my money, with lessons and everything like that. So that leads me to the second thing is, you cannot blackmail somebody into being good. We've spent all this money on you, and look what you do with it. All that did is piles guilt onto a player, and that's adding to the pressure and adding to the anxiety. And they know that you're spending money on them. You don't have to tell them. And also, if you start to look at sport as an investment in them as people, just like school. So people will not bat an eyelid, paying $100,000 to a private school or whatever to get the best education for their kids, but they'll go crazy about spending, $20,000 on their tennis or whatever sport it is, not understanding that actually that's just as good an education as they're going to get in this private school. So I think if you see sport as an investment in them as people, rather than this is an investment where I need to get a monetary return on my investment. Your return may eventually be monetary if they get good enough, but them as people, the return will be far more, especially if you handle it well as a parent. So the third thing is, you can't shame someone into being good. You see this a lot. If you weren't so bothered about what people think of you, you would play better tennis. Anything that shames your kid is just the wrong way, because all shame does is actually put guilt into the player and makes them feel like they're inadequate. I'm not good enough because I'm told all the time that I should be doing better. If I really appreciated what they did for me, I'd be doing better. Those are things really to avoid. And the other thing is, if you've been on you don't know too much about the sport and you're going on the journey with a kid, and I see this a lot with parents, is they're around the sport for 4 or 5 years. So they're one of the more maybe senior parents, and they suddenly start to think that they know the sport. And that is very, very arrogant, because they'll start to maybe, and I've had this where parents start telling you how to do your job. Hold on a second. You've been in the sport for, 5 years following your kid around, and suddenly you think you know what they need. And, you're now going to tell the experts, like, you wouldn't go in a doctor's surgery and say, hey, look, mate, I've Googled a few things now, and I don't think this operation needs to be done. They wouldn't think about doing that. But with sport, parents can very quickly start to think that they know a lot. And then they start to try and coach the kid. And that is a disaster, because the kid's then going to get some very poor messages from the parent.
So from what you've said, there's a concept called growth mindset that seems to me to be the thing that you would push parents towards, is like trying to instill a growth mindset in kids. So it's not about blackmailing, it's not about shaming, it's about rewarding effort and celebrating the process rather than the results. Would that be a fair?
It definitely is. I mean, don't forget there are kids, and sometimes kids do need a kick up the ass, and sometimes you got to just say, look, today the way you were on court is unacceptable, and I don't mind watching you win or lose, but I'm not going to watch somebody who's going to be dinging their racket 50 times and moping around the court. That's unacceptable behavior. I understand the odd ding. I understand the odd screaming out. I understand pressure, that these things can happen. But when it's just this ongoing, when the behavior is unacceptable to you as a parent, and that's not the trying hard, it's the behavior that is coming from somewhere. And then try to investigate, what is it about today that made you feel so bad on court? Because I don't want to watch that again.
Got a suggestion for parents who want their kids to stop banging their racket on the ground. If they break their racket, then they have to earn the money to buy another racket by shoveling the shit from underneath the woolshed. That'll teach a kid very, very quickly.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bjorn Borg, when his parents took away his rackets and didn't allow him to play for a month. Yeah. Didn't throw a racket after that again. So yes, and that is acceptable, because it's a consequence of what they do. But just shouting at them and telling them that, it's unacceptable, you can't do this, and if you do that again, I won't pay for your lessons or anything like that. It's like, okay, that's unacceptable. If you do that again, okay, I'm going to take your rackets away for a month. Okay. But the danger of something like that is, in the heat of the moment, when it's actually, I wouldn't say justified, but pressure can get, and something happens, you start to get in that gray area. I think, your way is a little healthier, is that, okay, if you do it, you're going to have to shovel shit from that, which is not hurting their tennis in any way. You got to be pretty certain that your kid can keep the racket in their hand under the extremest of pressure before you're going to say, if you ever do it again. It's like yelling out, I don't want to hear you scream out F again,
Yeah.
It's not always that easy. And I think, in time, players understand reality, and they understand when you're being fair or unfair. And I think that it's really important to be fair. And I think also, what I said earlier, it's really important to try and find out, what it is that's causing them to feel that way. And if you can get to that, then maybe you can, help alleviate the pressure for them a little bit.
I like that. I'm aware we've got 4 minutes, so I've got 3 more questions for you, and let's try and make them
short,
quick fire, unless there's something you want to dig deeper into. Who do you think the best player in the world is when they're nervous, and why?
I mean, right now, I'd say Alcaraz. And the reason I'll say that is because a lot of the time he plays with a smile on his face, even under pressure. And I think he has a very good feel as to when to put the ball in the court and when to go for it. And if it's a moment to go for it, I don't think he hesitates. He just says, okay, this is a moment to go for it.
If you had to say all time, who would you say?
I mean, all time, I think, I'm going back quite a while. I think Bjorn Borg was unbelievable. Somebody who never said a word on the court, positive or negative. You never saw him like fist pumping or anything like just Iceman. I mean, if you think of doing that, nobody had really done that before, and nobody's done it since. There are people that have been ice, but they'll still be really positive. Sampras was kind of pretty close, but he could really give a good fist pump and stuff like that. Borg, nothing. And I think he created a myth that he was ice under pressure, and he was very good under pressure.
Backed it up. It sort of reminds me of Federer in a way. Like most of the time, nothing, but extremes on both ends. And especially the extreme on the negative end could actually shake people and turn a match.
Yeah.
He very rarely exploded, but when he did, you could see his opponent was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
And think about that. Borg in his pro career never did that at all, on both ends.
That's outrageous. Is there a character trait that you think best correlates with a tennis player being successful?
I'm going to be a little bit maybe controversial here. I have a sneaky suspicion that introverts make better tennis players. And I don't really believe in introversion as such, because I believe introversion happens when you're uncomfortable in any situation. And extroverts are just people who are more comfortable in more situations. So people think they're extrovert. But you can take any extrovert and put them in a situation where they're uncomfortable and they become introverted. But introverts have to slowly extrovert themselves as they get better and more confident. And I think that struggle to, Federer was very introverted when he first started, but you see, he's a statesman now. His confidence, his ability, you pretty much say he's an extrovert now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was going through
that way. And I think a lot of people just think, the loud and everything, and you'll have a lot of athletes say that basically I'm introverted, but the sport kind of forced me to come out. And I think I have a suspicion that struggle to really bring your personality out is part of the toughness that they gain. Obviously, there'll be natural extroverts who are very good as well. But if I look back, a lot of top athletes started as introverts.
I mean, thinking it through from the surface, 3 of the big 4, 1 of the big 2 now, I'd say, on face value are introverts.
Yeah. But getting so good, they're forced to become, more and more extroverted. And of course, they get so comfortable with being stars that helps.
Yeah. Well, Dave, I think that might be all we have time for.
All right. Well, I know you're very pushed for time today, so that's great. If you can, let me know who you think I should have on the podcast, not next, but as a guest. And if you can't come up with a quick answer, that's fine. You can let me know.
I'm going to give you someone. Does it have to be from the tennis world?
No, absolutely not.
I think you should talk with a guy called Hamish Kerr, who is the most dominant high jumper in the world right now. He's Olympic champion, world champion, Diamond League champion. And I haven't dived into this with him, but he smiles before every jump. And I think you having to talk to him about mentality and how he approaches competition, I think there could be something really interesting there.
I would love to if you can put me in touch, and it would be an absolute pleasure.
I will. I'll do that.
Marcus, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure as always, and good luck with everything that you do.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Same to you.
For watching Locker Room Power with David Sammel. If you enjoyed the episode, hit subscribe and leave a comment on your favorite platform. See you in the next one.